In 1955, Senator John F. Kennedy published the Pulitzer Prize-winning volume of short biographies titled Profiles in Courage. He wrote a letter to Ernest Hemingway requesting to use the author's definition of courage, grace under pressure, in the opening sentence of his book. Hemingway said yes. The two became pen pals, though they never actually met. Hemingway even wrote to Kennedy after his inaugural address saying, quote, "It's a good thing we have a brave man as our president." Ernest Hemingway wrote the majority of his letters from his home in Cuba, which he shared with his wife, Mary Welsh. They moved back to the United States in 1959. When Hemingway died in 1961, the bulk of his literary collection remained in Cuba. A fan of Hemingway's work, Castro was willing to let Mary gather Hemingway's belongings and bring them back to the States. However, the U.S. travel restrictions in the 60s prevented her from making the trip. In the 1940s, Mary had worked with a man named Bill Walton as a journalist in London. Coincidentally, Walton was also Senator Kennedy's neighbor when he lived in Georgetown before the presidency. Walton and Kennedy remained close friends until Kennedy's death. A literature and art enthusiast, Walton appealed to JFK to ease restrictions, allowing Welsh to return to Cuba and collect her late husband's belongings. In 1961, Welsh made the trip, collected the belongings, and donated the Hemingway home to the Cuban people. Upon returning to the U.S., Mary Welsh searched for a permanent home for her husband's papers. Bill Walton played middleman again in the 1960s and talked to Jackie Kennedy about housing the documents in her late husband John F. Kennedy's presidential library. Mary Welsh agreed to donate the collection in a written letter to Jackie Kennedy in 1968. The first Hemingway papers were archived at the library in 1972. And the Hemingway Room opened in the JFK Library in 1980. The collection houses 90% of Hemingway's manuscripts, the French notebooks on which he wrote The Sun Also Rises, 39 different endings to A Farewell to Arms, 10,000 letters, 10,000 photos, a high school paper on which he received a D, and a large assortment of flasks. Today, the JFK Library is not only home to the late president's memorabilia, but also the largest collection of work made available to the public in America by Ernest Hemingway, who JFK once affectionately explained, almost single-handedly transformed the literature and the ways of thought of men and women in every country in the world.